video retake, we're going to go over just a few extra examples on converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. And this slide right here that I have in front of me is exactly like what your quiz will ask you to do, giving a fraction, a decimal, a percent, and converting between the three. So I would highly recommend writing down every step that you see in these problems. For the first one, we're given a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. We want to convert across into the other forms. So when I'm dealing with fractions, the first thing I like to do is I actually like to simplify the fraction right away, because once I have it in simplest form, now it's a little bit easier to decide if I need to do long division or if I can convert it into a hundredth exactly. And this problem actually gets converted into a hundredth pretty nicely. Let's see if I can move these over without messing up the slide. These actually convert into hundredths pretty nicely because I can multiply the numerator and denominator by 25. I like to think of quarters. So this ends up being 75 hundredths, which now can be converted to the decimal, 75 hundredths. Once we have hundredths, remember that percent means per century or per hundred. So that is going to be 75%. Once again, the decimal and the percentage are usually going to look incredibly similar. For example, if I have the lower problem, 74 hundredths, that is going to be written as the percentage 74% immediately. Then we move back to the fraction, and we remember that this is 74 hundredths. And now we have to divide both of these numbers by 2 because they're both even. Now I'm going to do long division on 74 divided by 2, but not on this page because we don't have quite enough room. But 74 divided by 2 ends up being 37, which is prime. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Since 37 is prime, this is in simplest form. For the last problem, if we have 35%, we then write that as the decimal 35 hundredths. We can then write that as the fraction 35 hundredths. And now we just have to simplify. Both of these can be divided by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And we are done. This is exactly like what the quiz would ask you to do. A few other types of problems could be which of these three numbers is largest and why. So now we have to find a way to convert them to each other. Now we can make them all fractions, we could make them all decimals, or we could make them all percentages. Personally, if I have the choice, I want to make them all into percentages because that's the topic that we're learning, so it gives me extra practice. So, for the first number, in order for this to be a percent, we need it to be per hundredth. Well, I know 1 and 2 tenths is the same as 1 and 20 hundredths. Well, 100% is 1, so this should be over 100% or 120%. The second problem is already in a percentage, so I can leave it as 84%. And the last problem is a fraction. So to turn this into a percentage, we need per century, per hundred. So I'm going to multiply both of these numbers by 2 to turn this into 8 tenths. Well, 8 tenths is the same as 80 hundredths. And now we have our percentage, which is 80%. So in order of greatest to smallest, they're actually written in that order right now. This is the largest number. This is the second largest number. And then this is the third one. So that's another type of problem. And the last type of problem is a different type of story problem that wants you to find the percentages of a real-world situation. So yesterday, Mr. Schmidt and Brody played a game of basketball against each other. During the game, Brody made 6 shots and missed 4 shots. Mr. Schmidt made 8 shots and missed 3 shots. Who made a higher percentage of their shots? So what I'm going to do for this problem is I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. I have Brody here on the left, and I'll put myself here on the right. Now we need to figure out who made a larger percentage. So we need to know made out of the total number of shots. So for Brody, he made 6 shots, and he shot a total of 6 plus 4, or 10. Mr. Schmidt made 8 shots and shot a total of 8 plus 3 for 11. So now we need to make them both into percentages, or I guess we could do a common denominator here, but since we're learning percentages, I'm going to do that. I know that 6d 100ths is the same as 6/10ths. Therefore, Brody made 60% of his shots. Mr. Schmidt, though, has 8 out of 11, and 11 doesn't have a whole number that I can multiply to get to 100. So our backup plan, like we talked in the last video, is long division. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 8 divided by 11, and I'm going to add my zeros in. Well, 11 times 7 is 77. And I subtract, and I get 30 after I bring down my next 0. 11 times 2 is 22. I have 8 remaining, and I bring down an extra 0. And we're back to where we started. This will be another 7. Once again, we want to round to the 100th place since we're dealing with percentages. So I want to round here. The 7 is going to make this closer to 73%. Therefore, Mr. Schmidt, of course, had the higher shooting percentage. And that is decimals, fractions, and percents, and being able to convert between those 3. If you have any questions, please let me know.